New world, new money, new pedigree, new love, new money, new everything. Thank God that I made it through the wilderness, head over heart. Now I'm standing on business.
The first thing that we want to do is we want you to introduce yourself and explain like what you do. I won't do the introduction for you like a lot of podcasts and stuff do. I want you to be able to show yourself to everybody the way that you would like to do that. So once again, just before we do the introduction, I just want to explain that. So what I did was I created a school called Wondereum University, like we talked about, and it's basically a school that's teaching people how to do a lot of different creative things. I'll be teaching people how to create no-code apps, how to make music using certain software, how to do various things. But before I do that, I wanted to highlight the importance of mental and emotional health, like mental health and emotional intelligence. And as you already know, we've been connected for a little while now, and the work that you do, with the shadow work and stuff like that, is absolutely amazing. I've seen videos that you've done where you showed like certain meetings that you had with certain clients, and I could tell and I could see it was pretty obvious that they had a change of perspective as far as how they viewed themselves, and how they viewed family members and things like that. And I understand personally that a lot of those things are very, very important and need to be prioritized. Just with whatever endeavor that we decide to pursue, or just in general in life, is very important to understand a lot of things about ourselves, deeper things about ourselves, and how we perceive things. So, with that being said, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Keleisha, right? I feel like we've already gone through this, but I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right for this video. It's Keleisha. Correct. All right, perfect. So if you can go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do, and then we'll go ahead and get into it.
Yes. Well, my name is Keleisha Lashaye, and I'm a coach. It's so funny that you asked me to introduce myself, because I feel like that's something, I went through some identity shifts in my business this year. And I think, identity was the main thing, was like, what kind of coach am I? What am I, and I was really, it was a real challenge earlier this year, because I felt like I needed to like niche down and, all the things. But I just say coach now because the type of coaching that I do is so vast. Mm-hmm. I have from business coaching to, helping clients create businesses and like scale them, to just like mindset things, stuff in people's relationships, and even more recently helping like dating and relationship coaching, nice. As well as executive coaching. So it's a little bit of, it's a gumbo.
Right. Makes sense to me.
But I mean, at the heart of, I think, most of our problems, it's mindset problems. It's things that are related to less about like what's happening in the now, and more so like something connected to like our inner world or our perception based on our past experiences, which is why like the shadow work is so important. So that's a little bit about me.
Love that. I love that. And I appreciate you for that introduction, and and for being transparent as far as like the identity shift thing that you were saying, because I feel like a lot of us have approached a time where it's just like kind of going through the same thing, where it's like we're kind of figuring out like, well, what type of way do I want to be, or what types of things can I integrate, or how can I build off of what it is that I'm trying to do? Because you start off with one identity, but your identity is always evolving. So trying to keep up with that, especially when you're working with the public and working with other people, is it could be a little challenging. So definitely thank you for being transparent and putting that out there. It seems like regardless, you're still doing great work. The dating thing, I'm gonna ask you some questions about that a little bit later, because that sounds like a pretty cool endeavor or cool integration to what you've been doing. So I definitely want to kind of see how that's been going. Um, so the second thing that I wanted to ask is, and this is around emotional intelligence. So I wanted to ask this specific question: how can becoming aware of our shadow self improve our emotional intelligence and relationships in business or creative work? And I'll say that again. How can becoming aware of our shadow self improve our emotional intelligence and relationships in business or creative work, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Ultimately, I think, the shadow is seen in such a negative light. Even I think how people like refer to like ego in things.
Mm.
But it's like when you really think about it, it's actually out of love. It's actually out of protection why we, block certain things off, or we stay in certain like comfort, and I say comfort very loosely, but
Mm-hmm.
we stick with the same type of situations because it's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And what we don't know is obviously more scary to our nervous system and to our brain, which is why we stay in relationships way beyond the expiration date, or in jobs that we know aren't fulfilling us, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
to answer your question, I feel like knowing our shadow is so key in any area of our life. I think if you know your shadows, you are less likely to project yourself onto other people,
Right.
right? Like you're less likely to um, blame someone else, and you're more likely to take accountability because you recognize like your areas for growth. You recognize like what your triggers are and things like that. So if I know that I have, let's say, like a core wound of, abandonment or rejection stemming from like my, parents not showing up for me when I was a child or not being what I needed,
Mm-hmm.
like that safe space, it makes sense why I'm starting to notice like, oh, I felt like some distance between me and my partner. Let me
Right.
do the most to try to like prove to them that I'm the perfect partner, that I can, whatever, because I'm feeling this disconnect, and I'm associating that with the abandonment and rejection. So having that awareness can help me to see myself in a different light, and also see other like perceptions from the same experience. So
Right.
rather than taking it personally and being like, oh, is it something I did, or what can I do to fix this,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, right? Like I'm more curious, that I'm more able to, because I notice, oh, I'm triggered in this situation, but let me actually ask them, like, hey,
How do
this
you
is me,
feel?
I've noticed the shift with us, like,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel that there's something going on? Like, I'd love to talk about it, type of thing,
Right.
versus like taking it personal and making all these stories up in my head, and aligning my actions to those stories, which usually ends up in
Yeah.
a wild situation anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having that awareness is the key in anything, business relationships, in just your everyday life and your career, all of the things.
Right. That was an immaculate answer, because I mean, and I had 100% faith that you were going to answer the way that I thought, because this is what you do, right? And just for everybody watching, we actually didn't get we talked about an opportunity to rehearse what the questions were going to be, but then like one of the last things I said on the phone the other night was like, you know what, let's just do it, because I feel like having authentic answers and things like that, I feel like that's what we really need right now. And that was the perfect type of answer that I was looking for with this type of question. Not necessarily that I was expecting anything, but just to kind of show everybody like just how important it is to do that shadow work. And then, like you said, one of the main things that I've seen with people that talk about these things and just content online and social media and stuff is that a lot of times people look at it as a negative thing. They look at shadow as like it is dark, but dark doesn't necessarily mean negative. It just means that you can't really see it. So shining a light on certain things and doing it for the right reasons. Like you said too, whereas instead of just looking at it from a victim standpoint, or this is just how I feel or how I think, it's like, to ask those questions like, okay, well, I've noticed that things have been going like this. Like, how do you feel or how do you perceive these things? And I feel like it makes you a little bit of a stronger empath. And it's all in the name of efficient and healthy communication, and healthy resonance and relativity with other people. So I'm so glad you said that. This is beautiful. This is starting off perfectly. So I appreciate that. So my next question for you, Keleisha, would be, and this is around mental health connection as well, but a slightly different question is, many creators struggle with burnout or self-doubt. So how can shadow work help them identify the root of these problems? And I'm going to say that one more time. Many creators, because this is the Wondereum thing, is all about helping creators, efficiently create. But I understood, and I've discovered with myself, with a lot of research that I've done, that it's very important to understand a lot of things about yourself first, the things that you don't necessarily see on the surface a lot of times. So one more time, the question is, many creators struggle with burnout or self-doubt. So in your personal and expert opinion, how can shadow work help them identify the root of these patterns?
I think shadow work can help. Because if you get to the root, then you can reframe it. I think that's the ultimate goal. If you can get to the root of what the issue is, and again, it very rarely has to do with the scenario at hand, like usually what's like right in front of you, but it's more so connected to something from a past negative or traumatic experience that you've had that you developed a story behind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, all men are, trash, or, oh, nobody can pay for my services. Nobody's willing to, invest in or whatever, right? Like, that usually stems from something in our past.
Right.
So doing the shadow work to uncover, again, just those core wounds and those self-limiting beliefs is going to help you to be able to move forward. A lot of times we're conditioned to think that we just need to, just keep going despite the discomfort, despite not feeling like something is completely right, and we just hustle through things, versus maybe I need to take a step back and actually reflect. And
Right.
that actually can be the momentum that we need to catapult us into the actual desired goal or environment or whatever it is that we want. But a lot of times we look at that pausing, that reflecting, and that taking a step back as something negative. We think that's us going backwards,
Right.
rather than something that can catapult us forward. Another part of that question that you mentioned, having the burnout and things like that, I think it's because people are using other people's templates. And I think because we're so, and I was a victim of this myself for some time, where I just kept thinking, oh, well, I got to show up like this on Instagram, because it's the aesthetically pleasing, and people have cover photos, and all the extra stuff. We're looking at other people's templates and trying to figure out how to fit into it, or how to make it our own, which I'm not saying that that's a problem, but a lot of times we can get overstimulated and overwhelmed. And it also ends up, while we're doing all this research, right, it ends up blocking our creativity, and blocking our ability to just trust our intuition and do things that feels aligned. Because when I tell you, the most magnetic viral videos were people that didn't have their perfect lighting set up. They didn't have the perfect, oh, I'm in a coffee shop and I'm just doing this. Those videos do pop too, but most of the most viral videos were raw moments. They were real. They were when people were being magnetic, and you're the most magnetic when you're being true.
Right.
To whatever's happening for you, whatever's coming up for you, whatever's on your heart. Now, not to say don't filter anything, right? But there is a balance there. And I think the less we focus on trying to fit into someone else's template and just figure out how we want to create our own, that'll prevent a lot of the visibility blocks that most creators tend to have. They have all this passion and all this purpose and, all this intention, but
Right.
because they haven't done some of their own shadow work and their own personal development work and face themselves,
Right.
they're more focused on other people rather than being of service to people,
Right.
and being able to like just give whatever it is that they want to give and just trusting that the right people will resonate with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes 100% sense. And yeah, that's amazing because me and my brother were talking about this a little bit ago before we got on this conversation, and that was one of the main things we're talking about. Is you said one key thing is talking about using other people's templates, and that's something that I've observed over the years. It's one of the unhealthy factors of mainstream social media is the fact that a lot of people tend to follow trends and tend to try to use even if not just with social media but even with their business structure, they tend to try to follow these certain templates or use these certain templates. Well, this worked for this person, so let me try to use this template. And it's like, okay, well, and I've done it myself, and it's like, one thing that I learned was that if you don't have a similar mindset to what that person had when they did what they did and how they did it, then you can use the template all you want, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna have the same effect or impact the way that you foresee it. And I feel like a lot of times authenticity is something that people struggle with for the past few years, is because like when you see somebody winning over here doing this, and then you have this idea and you're like, okay, well, I can try this, but then I'm risking it not being successful, or I'm risking it flopping, or I'm risking looking like a fool because it's not something that's already been proven to be a thing. Or you could be in something where, okay, there's a few people that are in this community and they're doing this or in this industry or whatever, but it's not popping, or it's not the common thing, or it's not the main thing everybody's looking at. So then it's like, okay, well, do I do this thing because I authentically feel like this is my thing, I feel passionate about this, or do I not do it because it's not something that could be easily validated by the masses and stuff like that in current times. And so I've always been a huge advocate of authenticity. That's like always my thing. Anybody that knows me, I always say authenticity is everything. I even got a new slogan for for Wondereum, which is authenticity is the new currency. Because I feel like, and especially in this day and age of AI and all this stuff like that, like, standing out is going to be like the new currency. It's like it's going to be less about doing things for money and more about doing authentic things, and then the money will come, the attraction will come, followers will come, all that stuff like that. But instead of doing things to get followers or to, for whatever reason it is, because I feel like that's the thing that comes down to shadow work. And one of the things I talk about the most is, a lot of people do things because let's say like somebody wants to get a bunch of followers. I've asked people a bunch of times, like, oh, okay, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do this, or why do you want to do that? Well, I want to get a bunch of followers. And I'm like, okay, well, but why do you want to get a bunch of followers? They can't answer the question. And, I've seen it in a lot of different ways, and I won't go too much in depth into that, but I've seen in a lot of different ways that people want to get followers because they feel this need to be accepted, by different people, because they grew up not feeling accepted by their family or their friends, or stuff like that. And I know that for sure because I went through the same thing. And I had a whole little phase where I was doing all these different things trying to be accepted by people instead of doing what was authentic to me. And I've realized that I missed out on a lot of things because I'm like, I didn't even want to do that stuff. Like, none of that stuff was ever fun. None of that stuff was fulfilling. I wanted to do this, but I didn't do it because I didn't think I would be accepted. It wasn't cool, And then nowadays what we're finding is you're seeing all different types of things that are coming out. Now it's like nerd culture and cosplay and anime and all this stuff is becoming cool, which a lot of us that were avoiding doing those things, trying to be cool, now this is the cool thing. you know. And so, even with that being said, it's like, okay, let's say you don't like anime or whatever. Now, don't jump on the nerd culture because now this is the cool thing. Do what you do, be authentic, and then everybody can kind of feel fulfilled in the ways that they want to be fulfilled. But that mindset of doing the shadow work and realizing why you make certain decisions, why you pursue certain things, and ultimately it comes down to trying to be intentional. You want to be intentional with what you're doing, so you have to be authentic in order to get the best fulfillment out of whatever it is that you're intending to do. So I definitely appreciate you coming on here and having this conversation with me. I wanted to make it kind of brief. And you've already touched on so many things. I don't even have to ask, any of these questions. But I did want to ask now: is there anything else that you would like to tell these students before we sign off here, based off of either what I said or if you have something else that you want to add to this? Is there anything else that you'd like to leave everybody with?
Um, I would just say don't be afraid to invest in yourself. And by that I mean like one of the pivotal things that changed my life was getting coaches, like getting a coach. And I mean, when I tell you, like I said it at the end of the year on last year on the podcast, the last episode of the year, I was like, I realize I really don't have problems anymore because whatever challenge I face, either I have community or resources that could support me, or I could go pay someone to like help me through it.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally a coach for everything at this point, right?
Yes, there is.
If I want to learn to dress different, or if I want to eat different, more healthier, or learn to be vegan, or, whatever the thing is,
Right.
there's coaches out here. Now, everybody ain't qualified.
Well, that part, that part.
But ultimately, there are plenty of qualified people, like in whatever aspect I'm trying to improve my life. So I recommend, just because it's not something that I grew up with. I didn't grow up around people that were like, oh, I got a coach for this, outside of sports, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
same.
that's something I like. If I had to wish anything different, it would be that I got a coach earlier. But I know it happened exactly when it needed to happen. But if you
Right.
can do that, to get a coach to kind of hold you accountable for things, help you to shift your mindset, like you will get results way, way, way quicker
Mm-hmm.
than if you were doing it on your own. Not to say that you can't, because pretty much everything that's out there you can learn across platforms, right?
Yeah.
TikTok, YouTube. When I want a new recipe, I'm going to TikTok now, not even
Right.
going to Google. So
Right.
um,
Right.
it's definitely stuff out there, but it's still about how much you value your time
Mm-hmm.
and energy. Because if you value that, then you will want quicker results versus like, okay, yeah, I know I can do it by myself, but how long
So
is
just
it going
gonna,
to take?
yeah, yeah.
So that's the little piece that I'll leave y'all with. You said you had questions about the dating too, or you wanted
Um,
to save that for a different conversation.
yeah, I was gonna save that for a different conversation, but now that you brought it up, real quick, I want to ask you like how is that going? So as far as I know that you were doing personal you've been doing personal coaching, personal shadow work with people. So I never really considered like what it would be like to do. I mean, I've had relationship counseling and stuff like that, but that was more like just common psychology stuff like that. So, but I know shadow work is deeper, and it's intended to be deeper. So, how does that work? And like, I guess the first question I would ask is like, what made you decide to get into doing relationship shadow work?
So ultimately, I think it stemmed from me, being on the dating scene
Mm-hmm.
and just being very neutral. Like, I remember a time when I used to swipe, and because, I do online dating as well, and I would swipe, and I would just be like, these men out here is a mess.
Right.
And I was one
Man.
of them people saying, oh, it's trash out here and all that stuff. But since I've gotten coaching, I even did invest in a dating coach, which she changed my life
Hmm.
and my business and my personal relationships. So I just finally, after doing my own work, I got to this point of neutrality where I was just noticing patterns with men in communication and how they were showing up, and even, how they were, with their profiles and things like that. And it just sat with me for some time, but I actually resisted it originally when it came up for me because I was just
Right.
like, it felt so different than
Right.
anything that I've done before.
Right.
And especially shifting because with the dating coaching, I'm particularly focused on men.
Right. Okay.
Men over 30 that like want like a long-term relationship or marriage. So
Okay.
I resisted it, but it finally just kind of became clear. And I even started it and then I stopped because I had a conversation with somebody that got me in my head. And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped, backed away from it for some weeks. But recently, I ended up going to a mastermind, and that just kind of shifted the way I was thinking about my business and how I was taking my business personal.
Okay.
And that kind of shifted, gave me some boundaries, and it was like, I mean, ultimately we're multi-talented, multi-passionate, but we just need to decide. And if we decide that we want to move forward with that, then that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we go all in. So it was just a conscious decision I made, but it kind of seemed inevitable, honestly.
Right.
Like when I started looking at my own journey and all of the things, you know, I'm a neuroscience and psychology nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that, loving to see about like human behavior and patterns and things. But
Right.
again, having that neutral piece, also seeing as a woman who is neutral, who isn't like petty and feeling like, oh, I gotta make these men feel a certain kind of way, like
Mm-hmm.
none of that energy, to help a man see, like from a woman's perspective, how this shows up, helping them to elevate their communication style, helping them to elevate, you know, doing like profile audits and things like that, so they can actually like make that do more of the heavy lifting and get more quality matches. Like all of these pieces, even just the piece of like vetting beyond chemistry, right?
Right.
For
Right.
the man that wants something long term, and how he can pick things up, spot these flags like way earlier in connection. It just all came, you know, and it's flowing beautifully. So, yeah.
I love that. I love to hear that. That's cool. Thanks for giving us that insight because you know, relationships is a big part of everybody's lives. You know, connections are a big part of everybody's lives. So, you know, that I mean, obviously, because a lot of times, a lot of these podcasts and stuff out here, it's you know, most of the time people are watching podcasts about relationships and you know, trying to get perspective or trying to gain different perspectives or trying to gain knowledge or you know understand patterns, things that they might not have seen before. So they try to get other people's experiences and other people's you know opinions about things. And so I feel like you have a very healthy approach to you know relationship coaching and the shadow work and stuff like that. I particularly like the fact that you're working with men that are you know 30 and up because I feel like that's really around the time where men kind of start to focus on you know what they really want in relationships. And of course it takes some of us longer than others. Of course it's you know we can't just go out here and just pick a soulmate whenever we want to, but it's like you know but really understanding ourselves better is what allows us to attract better. So you know it's I feel like you're doing the Lord's work with that one, and I'm glad that that you that you realized that it was kind of you were kind of already on that path. And I'm glad that you also, you know, put in the fact that you were resisting it at one point because I know how that feels. It's like you know when you know that this kind of something that I should be doing, but I don't necessarily feel 100% comfortable because it's a little bit of foreign territory to me. So I don't know if I don't know if I want to do that, but I'm glad you stuck with it. I'm glad you continue to do it, and it sounds like it's working pretty well for you. So we're gonna. I'll probably end up. We'll probably end up doing another a video specifically talking about that stuff, whether it's for the courses or whether it's just for something else. But I definitely want to dig in a little bit more to that and kind of get a little more, you know, some of your stories and stuff. Of course, you don't got to give any detailed information about, you know, whatever you don't feel comfortable discussing. But I want to do that because I want to kind of drive people towards your services and what you do. Like I said, I feel like you really have a good mindset. That's the reason why I wanted to talk to you first about shadow work and stuff like that, because you do a great job. I've seen a lot of videos and a lot of people that do this stuff, and there's a lot of people that do great work. But I feel like you're the most authentic and the most genuine from what I've observed. So that's why I wanted to do that. So thank you so much for having this conversation with us. I'm gonna definitely put your information in the descriptions and stuff like that, so people know how to find you, how to reach you, and this is gonna be a part of the course like we discussed. So I'll send you the video and all that, so we can figure out what works, what if you feel comfortable with this video being in the course and all that stuff. But other than that, thank you so much for your time, and we will talk again soon. And did you wanna leave anybody with a little outro, or you all good?
Just be intentional, be great, you. And thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I feel truly honored that you selected me. I know there's plenty of people like you said, that are doing this. So I'm truly moved by the selection. So I look forward to future endeavors together, and yeah.
Absolutely, me too. Absolutely. So thank you so much. I'm honored as well. So thank you for stopping by.